Hi, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of our participants today that have joined us. Welcome. To introduce myself quickly, my name is Nikhil Pasricha, and I'm here on behalf of the Global Fund for this system demonstration session today for PRs on the new submission pathway of grant-ready funding requests in GC8. Before we begin, I would just like to note that this session will be coordinated and facilitated by us in English. However, for any of our French or Spanish speaking participants, you will be able to locate live captions for anything that is said in this session by following the instructions on the screen. So within your Teams browser, if you click on the three dots at the top that says More, you will then be able to find the Language and Speech button. And once you click on it, you will then see that you are able to select the live captions. Once the live captions are available to you at the bottom of the screen, you can then click on the gear icon to then set your language settings. And you can then choose in which language you would like to hear the captions for. So please feel free to then select your preferred language. Now, to begin, just as a reminder, this session carried out by the Global Fund, it will be a system demonstration for PRs to walk through all of the PRs that are here today on how their role will take place within the new submission pathway of grant-ready funding requests in GC8 that will be done through the partner portal. To begin, I'll just quickly go over the agenda that we have in front of us today. So I will start us off by talking about the key changes for Grant Cycle 8 from previous cycles. And then I will hand it over to my wonderful colleagues who are joining me from various Global Fund teams and will help to facilitate the session, who will then walk through the remainder of the presentation, covering core grant level documents in GC8. So this will include some information around the online performance framework, the budget in Excel format, and then for some, there will be the online HPMT that will be applicable for your scenario. Followed by that, my colleagues will then cover this new submission pathway of grant-ready funding request and what that means for PRs to then be involved with helping CCMs develop the funding request. We will then close off the session by sharing with all of you some additional resources that are available for you, as well as followed by a question and answer session at the end. Please feel free to write any of your questions in the chat in either English, Spanish, or French. And my wonderful colleagues will indicate when they have been noted with a like. And then we will take some time at the end, time permitting, to then go over all the questions and provide answers from our side. Now to begin, let's dive right into the key changes in GC8. Now, as I mentioned in the beginning, this session will focus primarily on the new grant-ready funding request submission pathway. Historically, CCMs have completed the funding request package, and once that has been reviewed by the TRP, and if successful, we then move over to grant making, where then PRs develop the documents. Now, for the very first time in Grant Cycle 8, as part of the funding request submission, you may be required as a PR to then fill out grant level documents. So this includes the performance framework, budget, and in certain cases, the online HPMT as part of the funding request submission. Our intention with this is really to help us to support PRs in the compressed timelines that we are facing within this year and this changing environment in the global health landscape. We hope that this option for PRs to submit grant level documents already at the funding request stage, in parallel with the fewer requirements and streamlined guidance across all the submission pathways, will help PRs and CCMs to submit strong funding requests and at a later stage grant making applications, but also to allow timely grant signing with compressed timelines. Additionally, we will be onboarding CCMs to the partner portal for the very first time for funding request development. This will allow CCMs to access documents for funding request completion and then attach them once they have been submitted. In cases CCMs opt to go for a grant-ready funding request, then this would mean that the PRs are involved and will also then log into the partner portal and use the grant-making module to complete the online performance framework, the Excel budget, and in some cases, the online HPMT. Moving forward, I wanted to just take some time to quickly cover the high-level differences between application approaches and submission pathways. So for the purposes of this session, for Grant Cycle 8, we will be covering with principal recipients like yourself the submission pathway of grant-ready funding request. So this means that the PRs will be then involved to develop a grant-ready performance framework and budget. CCMs can also, of course, opt to take the classic funding request submission pathway. So this is what has been available at the funding request stage in previous cycles. So this means that CCMs under a classic submission pathway will submit all of the funding request documents, including the performance framework and detailed budget that they have developed. In the case of Grant Ready, the PRs will submit the performance framework and the budget to the CCM, who will then include it as part of the final funding request package from their side, and then similarly submit this to the Global Fund. In terms of application approaches, this is the term that we use to define for each funding request what are the required documents, and as well how is the TRP involved. For the sake of this session, as we've mentioned, we will cover really the submission pathway of grant-ready funding request. Within this funding request, the application approach may follow one of 4 application approaches, which is full review, followed by tailored for focused, or there could be 2 types of tailored for transition, depending on if it is a high impact and core portfolio, or if it is a focused portfolio. So again, we will, for this session, be covering grant-ready funding requests, where we recommend this will be opted for existing PRs. And so this will involve then the CCR endorsing and submitting the funding request with grant level documents that were prepared by the PR. So the CCM will still be responsible for downloading, completing, and attaching all other funding request documents. But for a grant-ready funding request, the CCM will receive the PF and budget from the PR, such as yourself. Once the TRP submission has happened, then grant making will continue as normal, and principal recipients will log on to the partner portal as normal to complete all of the necessary grant making steps. Throughout all of this, CCMs are expected to ensure that inclusive country dialogue takes place throughout the development of the application and as well as for grant making. Now, to just quickly cover some of the key steps in how this grant-ready funding request will proceed through the system. So again, for grant-ready funding requests, the CCM will nominate existing PRs who will develop grant-level performance framework and budgets that will be included in the CCM's funding request submission. For this, the process begins with the CCM first completing the submission pathway and PR nomination form. Here, the CCM will describe which submission pathway they would like to take, so the traditional route of the classic funding request, or our recommendation of a grant-ready funding request, which will involve the PR to develop grant-level documents. The CCM will also then specify additional information, such as which window the funding request will be coming in. For 2026, we have, of course, the windows 1, 2, and 3, for which we will share more information on the timelines in just a few more minutes. But once the CCM has completed this form and shared this with the Global Fund, the Global Fund will then create the funding request and share the funding request for the CCMs to access in the partner portal for the very first time. Once the CCM has accessed their funding request, they will then download all the documents and continue to work on them outside of the portal. In parallel, the Global Fund country team will share the grant level PF, which will be in an online version, as well as the budget, which will be in an Excel format, with the PR. So then we get to step 3, where PR will complete and submit the grant level PF and budget to the CCM via the portal. This then moves us to the next stage, where the CCM will review the performance framework and the budget in the new funding request module in the partner portal, and they will approve this as part of the funding request submission. Once the CCM is satisfied with the complete submission, the CCM will then submit the full funding request application through the partner portal to the Global Fund. Once that has happened, we then get to step 6, where then the Global Fund will share all of the funding request documents, including any of the grant level documents submitted by the PR for the TRP's review. And once the TRP has finished their review, we can then proceed to grant making as normal. The intention of this really is to help to expedite a lot of the grant negotiations, especially in a year that has such tight and compressed timelines, with grant signing still expected to happen as normal and on track. We also hope that this will reduce manual rework in terms of completing these documents first at the funding request stage and then again at the grant making stage. And really this should help to enforce and ensure strong grant design from the very beginning. Now, the eligibility for this, which we will really like to stress, is that the PRs that are involved in a grant-ready funding request are all continuing PRs from grant cycle 7. So for this, early nomination of the PR is very critical, especially if the CCM anticipates on following the grant-ready funding request submission pathways. We've also communicated to CCMs that CCMs planning to register to any 2026 TRP window, of which there will be 3, starting with the first one in June. For CCMs to then confirm their submission pathway and TRP window to the CT through this designated submission pathway and PR nomination form, no later than 30 days upon receipt of the allocation letter, which have been shared by the Global Fund to CCMs, I believe, just a few weeks ago. Now, as I mentioned earlier, for the very first time, the Global Fund will be onboarding CCMs to the partner portal to allow for funding request submission. Now, PRs, of course, have previous experience developing grant-making documents in the partner portal, and then that is what we would like to then leverage to then allow PRs to continue using the partner portal to now develop grant level documents for the funding request. The intention of the partner portal is to allow the Global Fund to have an external facing platform that will be a centralized location, not only for PRs, but also for CCMs to then have access to across the funding request and eventually grant making life cycle. The partner portal will provide one entry access point to allow both CCMs and to principal recipients to access the relevant documents within the partner portal. And this also allows the Global Fund to improve the visibility and transparency with both the CCMs and PRs and vice versa, to enable complete submissions, including that there is quality data that has been submitted by the CCMs and PRs. Moving ahead, we want to really stress the importance of ensuring that GED, aka grant entity data, is up to date. Ensuring that grant entity data is accurate and up to date for Grant Cycle 8 will allow PRs to access their grant level documents if following a grant ready submission pathway. And it will also help for the eventual grant making to help PRs access, complete, and submit the grant making package as normal. This will be the case both for funding requests that follow the classic pathway as well as the grant ready pathway. So really, please take some time to ensure that GED is up to date from your side so that both grant ready funding requests and the eventual grant making processes can be completed by the PRs in a timely manner. Of course, if you have any issues, please reach out to the country support team that's available through the partner portal, or reach out to your country team for any further questions. Moving forward, I just wanted to quickly cover some of the timings coming up. As I mentioned, timelines are definitely tighter this year than compared to previous cycles. So first of all, we will be looking at window 1, which is indicated by this yellow box on the left side there. So as you all are aware, allocation letters went out already, I think, over a month ago, sometime around end of February, early March. We then have, after the allocation letters, the responsibility for the CCM to complete the submission pathway and PR nomination form. And this will let the Global Fund know if there are any PRs that will be involved for a grant ready funding request, as well as the components of the funding request and the planned TRP window. And again, we will be encouraging CCMs to submit this no later than 30 days after receiving their allocation letter. In the meantime, again, please do update GED within the partner portal whenever possible to make sure that it is updated. Once all of this is done, we then have the window 1 timelines. So working backwards, we have the submission deadline for CCMs that will be 8th June. So that is just about 2 months away. And for this, if it is a grant ready funding request, then we know we will have both CCMs be involved as well as PRs. Whereas if the CCM decides to follow a classic funding request, especially in the case if there is a new PR, then it will just be the CCM that is involved. Once the submission has been done, the Global Fund Secretariat will then do their internal review. And in certain cases, they may ask either the CCM to resubmit certain funding request documents, or if it is a grant-ready funding request, the PR may be asked to resubmit either the PF, budget, or the online HPMT. Once the submission has happened, we will then be moving over to the Global Fund, who will then submit the documents to the TRP for their review, which will happen up until mid-July. And then once the TRP review has completed, we will then move in, starting from end of July to August, for the grant making, where then again PRs will be involved. For window 2, we have the submission deadline being 27th July. So that means there's, if you're following a grant ready funding request, this would give a bit more time in order to have the necessary country dialogue and to nominate as early as possible PRs for a grant ready funding request. Following this submission deadline of 27th July, we will then follow similar timelines as in window 1 of then the Global Fund doing an internal review of documents and potentially asking for resubmission. But if all the documents are complete, both from the CCM and the PR side, for grant-ready funding requests. The funding request will then be submitted, and then we will move to grant making if there is a successful TRP review with a positive outcome. So what are some then immediate next steps for funding requests in TRP windows? At the moment, CCM admin focal points are currently also updating GED to ensure that everybody from the CCM has the necessary access to their funding request, whether classic or grant ready. CCMs are planning meetings to discuss the PR nomination, program split, and submission pathways, and additionally planning country dialogue meetings to define their priorities moving forward. So while this is happening, immediate next steps for PRs will include that if they're being nominated for the grant-ready funding request, that if needed, please do add news editors and submitters for the completion of the grant online PF, as well as the HPMT. Again, in GED, you are able to select between two different types of roles, the first being editor, that will allow you to access information, edit information, etc., versus the submitter, which will allow you to do exactly the same as the editor, but then there's the big difference that you as the PR submitter will then be able to submit the online PF, the Excel budget, or the HPMT directly to the CCM. So really that's a big difference to make a note of. Once that's done, we always recommend to attend the Partner Portal info session, which you all are doing today. So again, a big thank you for everyone that's taken time out of their day to participate in this session. And shortly, once we have received this CCM confirmation form from CCMs, we will then proceed with creating the funding requests. And if there are PRs that are nominated for grant-ready funding request, you will then receive an automatic notification once your grant level documents or /forms are available in the grant making module in the partner portal for you to access. So again, once the funding request is shared with the CCM and the grant level documents are shared with the PR, both sides will receive an automatic notification with the necessary link in the partner portal and with the necessary next steps at that point in time. So with this, I'd like to kindly hand it over to my colleagues who will then be quickly discussing the core grant level documents in GC8. So this will include, again, the online PF, the online HPMT, as well as the budget Excel. Over to you, Alona. Thank you.
Thank you, Nikhil. Yes, good morning, good day, good afternoon. I'd like to also introduce myself. My name is Alona Alba. I'm a specialist in the operational efficiency team. And today I will walk you through some of the key changes that you would expect to see with the core grant level documents in GC8, as well as the process to follow in the partner portal for completing those forms and then submitting to the CCM. So first, let's start with grant level documents. So those forms that we will be referring to you today are key forms that we expect the principal recipients to complete and work upon during the grant-ready funding request, but also during grant making. Specifically, we refer to the performance framework, to the budget, and to the HPMT, or Health Product Management Template. Those forms have been revised, and all those forms have been revised and enhanced with the key principles at hand and the key objectives that you see here. First of all, we really worked hard to improve the user experience, and when you will be seeing some of the demonstrations today, you'll see that the performance framework is now becoming online and will be available for you to complete directly in the partner portal. We have also improved and simplified the calculations. So when it comes to visualizations, when it comes to the final output for those forms, you'll see that the user interface became more intuitive and it is really easy to follow the instructions. When it comes to integration with the global fund systems, this has been equally enhanced to ensure that the information is flowing coherently and consistently, and it is also visible both for the principal recipients, for the CCMs, and subsequently for the global fund for the review. Now, we're also strengthening the data quality checks. The data quality checks concept is not new. You might have worked already as part with the data quality checks as part of the principal recipient reporting. So we will be talking briefly about those today, and further details will be shared with you at a later stage. So let's move to the next slide. And then here I would like to walk you through some of the key principles and the key changes you would be seeing with respect to the performance framework and Excel budget. So when it comes to the performance framework, first of all, we are introducing an online form. So what that means is the moment that the principal recipient has been confirmed as the principal recipient participating in the grant ready funding request submission pathway, at that point of time, the principal recipient will also receive a link to access the partner portal. And in that partner portal page, we will also see this today in the demo. The PR will be invited to complete the online performance framework for the grant. So what that means is that you will have all the respective sections for the performance framework for you to capture all the required information for the grant. And then subsequently, once this process has been fully completed, there will be also run a data quality checks to ensure that the information that has been provided is complete. And you will be also invited to review those data quality checks and address any findings or provide justifications as needed. Now, what is also important to flag is that the online performance framework is the performance framework that you would be expected to submit to the CCM. So this is the core performance framework that you would be required to complete. There will be also an Excel collaboration file that will be made available for the principal recipients to extract with the online performance framework data that you would have captured at any point of time. However, it is the online performance framework submission that will be accounted as final, and you would be required to ensure that you have reflected all the changes and all the final version is reflected in the online PF form. So the moment that you have completed the online PF form and the budget, I'll talk about budget in a minute, the form is then the forms are then being submitted to the CCM and the partner portal. So at that point of time, the Excel with the same information that you have captured in the online form will be also captured in the performance framework that the CCM will be receiving on the funding request side, and they will be reviewing that in submission. They will be also completing the required documentation for the funding request application package. And if the submission is complete, if the performance framework that you have shared and completed is final and accepted as such, the CCM then finalizes the package. They mark the files and documents that they have on the funding request as final, and they proceed with a submission to the Global Fund. When it comes to the Global Fund, with respect to the review of the performance framework, the performance framework it will be visualized online in the same format as you would have completed it. And also the Global Fund country team, they will be able to see the data quality checks that have been flagged to you at the time when you were completing your performance framework. And the Global Fund country team will be also reviewing those DQCs. Please do note that if there are any edits or updates that would be needed for the performance framework, the Global Fund can request the resubmission from the PR and the CCM. Now I will move us to the Excel budget process. So here we are looking into the same timelines as for the performance framework. So the moment that the partner portal link is made available to you, you will be having access to both. Excel budget will be downloaded from the partner portal, and it is the Excel file that you will be working on and collaborating with the stakeholders in country to complete all the relevant data entries. What is critical to ensure here is that you work closely with the CCM, and you also ensure that your Excel budget is referencing the relevant information for the health product management template. I'll talk about that in a minute. And what is crucial to ensure is that you have finalized your Excel budget and you have attached it in the partner portal. So the final version of the Excel budget is required for you to proceed with your submission to the CCM. At the moment when you have finalized your budget, at the same point of time, this information that you had in your Excel will be automatically imported and visualized in the partner portal in the form of summary budget. So you will be able to see already all the information that you have provided. And also you will have the data quality checks that will be run for the budget lines, and you will be required to review those and address and make any corrections that you will be asked to complete. This step is also very, very important to ensure that you complete before your submission, and you reserve also enough time to complete this milestones. Once you have completed the budget, you will then submit it to the CCM. The CCM will review the Excel budget, will make the final, mark it as final as part of their submission package, and submit it to the Global Fund. If for any reason they would need to ask for a submission, they will be asking you to do so. And then the moment that the package is being submitted to the Global Fund for review, the country team will be also seeing that Excel budget and the summary budget with the data quality check outcomes that you have addressed and the justifications that you have provided. Very important to note here is that because we're looking into the grant-ready funding request submission pathway, the moment that this process is completed, we will then be transitioning to the grant making. And as part of the grant making process, you will have the opportunity to update your performance framework in online form or your Excel budget in the same manner as you have worked on it during your grant-ready funding request milestone. So now let's talk about the HPMT. So if we move to the next slide, the key change that we are introducing with the GC8 is that the Health Product Management Template, or HPMT, becomes an online form. So what that means is that we're no longer using the previous Excel version, but all the HPMT relevant updates will be made directly in the online form. USPRs will be receiving a dedicated link to access the HPMT in the partner portal, and in that form you will provide all the relevant information, and we also have a dedicated information session in April, so please stay tuned for that and register as soon as you have received the invite. And I will quickly explain to you how the HPMT is going to be completed in the context of the different submission pathways. So let's move us to the next slide. And here what you see really is the quick illustration of how the HPMT, online HPMT, is feeding into the process. So let's start with the fact that the HPMT, the online HPMT, is a requirement for high impact and core portfolios for grant-ready funding request submission pathway. It will be also required for grant making, for irrespective which funding request has been followed before. And this is why we highly, highly recommend to start working on the HPMT as soon as you have received the link, because as we know, HPMT is an integral part and it informs the key budget category. So this is why it is really important to work in synchronization. When it comes to the classic funding request submission pathway, where the CCMs can opt, and we strongly recommend to already start working, we strongly recommend to CCMs to start working with the principal recipients as early as possible, also to start integrating the online HPMT and capture the information there. Key change that you will see compared to other forms which we spoke about, the performance framework and the budget, is that for online HPMT, we're talking about direct submission to the Global Fund. So the moment that the principal recipient has completed the form, the information flow would go directly to the Global Fund country team for further review. When it comes to focused portfolios, those portfolios will not require to complete the online HPMT, but for them there is a dedicated tab that will be provisioned in the budget, which is named HP List Focused, and there the information, the relevant health product information can be captured already for those focused portfolios. And again, our recommendation is to start as soon as possible, as early as you can, and as soon as you have received the information and link from the Global Fund partner portal. So with that, we'll move us to the next segment, which is the data quality checks. And here, again, the concept of data quality checks is not really new. What we are introducing specifically for the GC8 is the improved data quality checks on the online performance framework, the Excel budget, and online HPMT. And those are intended to improve, first of all, to facilitate the data entry for you as principal recipient, also to flag if there's any missing or incorrect information, and to improve the data quality that we are trying to ensure that this is being addressed as early as possible, and we are providing more time for PRs to work on their documents and address those issues as soon as possible. This also prevents data entry errors, as I mentioned, and sometimes the information is just being missed because it was omitted, so that permits to follow up on those missed items. And also it facilitates subsequently the review process of the submitted data to the Global Fund, thus strengthening data integrity and consistency. So what you see here below is a quick introduction to the types of data quality checks that you will be seeing. The warnings are not new, so those are the types of and data quality checks that are informing you of the relevant, for example, relevant information is missing, or you would require to perform the update and provide a justification. So we'll have two types of those, the warning and the critical warnings, which will require you to address or to provide the justification comments if the data cannot be corrected. It will also allow you to proceed and to submit with those types of data quality checks. And we'll also be seeing those data quality checks at the PR submission and also at the country team review stages. When it comes to the error messages, so those are the ones that are captured on the right, in such cases, those data quality checks would not allow the users to submit up until the error is resolved. And those would be available to the country team when they will be reviewing and performing their finalization of the documents at the country team review stage. So more information will be forthcoming, and the system functionality for those will be also forthcoming. So let's then transition to the next chapter, which is the grant-ready funding request process in more detail. And if we could move to the next slide. Thank you so much, Nikhil. So as Nikhil presented, this is the overall process for the grant-ready funding request. So it starts with the CCMs confirming the components for their funding request that they would like to go ahead with, their submission pathway, and their window selection. They formalize it with the submission pathway and PR nomination form that is being then shared with the Global Fund. The moment that this has been done, then the CCM is also receiving the link. And the reason why I'm saying also, because the principal recipients will be also receiving the link. So we'll talk about that in a minute. And the CCM starts the process of completing the funding request, as Nikhil has just explained. And at that point of time, the principal recipient will be also receiving the link to access their forms, to access the grant level performance framework and budget and HPMT, if this is applicable to your portfolio, via the partner portal. So what we will do today is we'll show you the demonstration video that will explain you what are the steps required for you to complete in the partner portal at the moment that you have received this link.
When you click on the link in the email notification to log into the partner portal, you'll be taken to the grant-making module where you'll see all grants that have been shared with the PR as part of a grant-ready funding request. For each grant, the implementation period start and end dates are displayed, along with the status, and, when available, the Grant Approvals Committee meeting date. Click on a grant to open it. At the top of the page, you'll see key grant details. The TRP review window, implementation period, currency, allocation utilization period dates, and prospective implementation period dates. Below this, a chevron shows the current status of the funding request. In this example, the status is highlighted in blue, indicating PR to share grant forms with applicant. This page contains 3 tabs. The first is the Download tab. Here, the PR can download the budget as an Excel file. The second is the Performance Framework tab, where the PR completes the form directly online. The Performance Framework contains 7 subtabs. Here the PR will select modules, interventions, and indicators that are linked to the modular framework. The third is the Attach and Submit tab. This is where the completed budget is attached to the partner portal and the final grant forms are submitted for CCM review. Under the Performance Framework tab, the Overview tab displays the implementation period start and end dates, as well as the reporting periods for the 3-year grant. The dates shown are based on the implementation period start and end dates, as well as the reporting frequency selected. The dates shown here will be applied across the whole performance framework. Below is the Principal Recipients section, where the PR name is displayed. Next is the Module section. To add a module, click the Add button, select a module from the drop-down menu, then click Save and Close. All modules, interventions, and indicators in the drop-down menus can be found in the modular framework. In the Intervention section, click the Add button and select a module from the drop-down menu. Then select an intervention. Then click Save and Close. You only need to select an intervention when work plan tracking measures are applicable to the grant. The Goals tab is where the PR adds the grant's goals. Click Add, enter the goal in the description box. Language fields are available in the box below. Click Save and Close. In the Objectives tab, the PR adds the grant objectives. Click Add, enter the objective in the description box. Language fields are available in the box below. Click Save and Close. Next, the PR moves to the Impact Indicators tab. To add an indicator, click the Add button. You can either select an impact indicator from the drop-down menu, or you can add a custom indicator. You will see that the option of adding custom indicators is also available when adding an output or coverage indicator under the relevant tab. In this example, we'll select a custom indicator. Click Save and Continue. A pop-up window will appear where you can add the indicator details. In this example of a numerator-only indicator, select the baseline year and numerator, then enter the target numerators for each year. Add the report due date, baseline source, and any comments. Language fields are available in the corresponding boxes. If the impact indicator includes disaggregated data, complete the yearly numerators in the aggregation section, along with the baseline source and comments. Repeat this for all disaggregated categories. Click Save and Close. To delete an indicator, click the Delete button. and confirm by selecting OK. You can use this same process to remove indicators, modules, or interventions as needed. At any time, you can click the Edit button to revisit an indicator and modify the entered data. After entering an indicator, you can click the arrow to expand the section to review the associated data, or click on the Expand All button. This feature is available across all indicator types. The PR then moves to the Outcome Indicators tab. Click Add and select an outcome indicator from the drop-down menu, or add a custom indicator. Click Save and Continue. A pop-up window will appear where you can add the indicator details. In this example of a percent-only indicator, select the baseline year and percentage. Enter the target percentages and add the report due date. Baseline source, and comments. Language fields are available in the corresponding boxes. If the indicator includes disaggregated data, you can include this information below. Click Save and Close. In the Coverage Indicators tab, click Add. Select the module, and then select a coverage indicator from the drop-down menu, or add a custom indicator. Click Save and Continue. A pop-up window will appear where you can add the indicator details. In this example, we'll use a coverage indicator that uses a numerator and denominator. Select the scope of targets. Choose the baseline year, and enter the numerator and denominator. The percentage is calculated automatically. For the targets, enter the numerator and denominator for each reporting period. And add baseline source and comments. Language fields are available in the corresponding boxes. If the indicator includes disaggregated data, you can include this information below. Click Save and Close. If applicable, the PR can add workplan tracking measures by clicking the Add button. Selecting the module, intervention, and adding the key activity as free text. Translated versions can be added in the corresponding field. Click Save and Continue. The PR enters each milestone or target, including the criteria used to measure progress. Translated versions can be added in the corresponding field. Click Save and Close. The PR repeats this process to add all the relevant modules, interventions, indicators, and workplan tracking measures to complete the performance framework for the grant. Data quality checks will be integrated into the performance framework. More information will be shared at a later date. Once the performance framework and budget forms have been completed, the PR moves to the Attach and Submit tab. Here, the budget is attached and marked as final. Data quality checks will also be applied to budget data when it is attached in the partner portal. Further details will be shared at a later date. The performance framework does not need to be attached, as an extract of the data input into the online form will be automatically attached for the CCM's review. When the PR is ready to submit the grant forms to the CCM, they click the Submit to Applicant button. The chevron then updates to Funding Request in Progress, indicating that the CCM will review the grant forms and submit the application package to the Global Fund.
Now, moving over to the next section, we just wanted to share, of course, with you some resources that will be available to PRs for you to use over the next few weeks, but definitely over the next few months. So within this slide deck that we will share with PRs, you will be able to access all of these links and as well the recording of this session that you can then use to follow along in the future. Within resources, we will have links for the information sessions. So we've been doing a lot of information sessions for the different application approaches and now for the different submission pathways. So the recordings of all these you will be able to find in the link provided in front of you. Moving forward, we will also have some additional information session on the HPMT, which is coming later this month. So if that's of interest for you, please do keep an eye out. Additionally, we have all of the application materials that are available on the Global Fund website. So just another link for you to be available there. Finally, then we get to some of the support materials that some of you, the PRs, might find useful as you will navigate the partner portal, not only for a grant ready funding request, but also for grant making down the line. And so for that, first of all, we have an interactive guide for GED that PRs can use to ensure that GED is up to date, which is very critical. And then that's followed by a partner portal manual, which we will share with all PRs in the upcoming days in English, Spanish, and French, so that you have a detailed guide on the step-by-step systems that you as a PR will need to take in the system, so specifically the partner portal in the grant making module, to then complete your requirements for a grant ready funding request. Similarly, we will also share with you some additional demo videos like the one Ilona kindly walked us all through that you can then again use within the next few months as you start to develop the necessary documents. Here we just have available a high-level process map showing you all of the different steps and the different stakeholders that are involved, whether that is the Global Fund or the CCM or the PR. We can see that in the main part of the process map, you have the steps 5 to 10, which are only applicable for grant-ready funding requests. So this is where PRs will be able to find the steps most relevant for them. But then, of course, once the PR has submitted their grant-level documents, the CCM will then submit the funding request like normal. And we will proceed with the TRP review as normal, followed by, if there is a positive outcome from the TRP review, the funding request will then proceed to grant making. So with that, we get now to the final part of our session today. Thanks everyone again for your continued participation and for those of you that have been sharing and asking questions in the chat. So we've been joined by our wonderful colleagues who have been taking note of all of the questions that you guys have been putting into the chat and working diligently to provide some answers for all of you. So for that, I will just reshare my screen so that we can get a list of all of the questions available for us to have a look at. And we can then go now to the question and answer session. So I invite some of my colleagues that are here with me today to then walk us through some of the questions that have then been shared with us for today's session.
Thanks, Nikhil. So shall we start with the first question? So the first question is, when will the templates become available in the portal? So the PRs will receive a notification from the Global Fund that the forms are available and they can be accessed on the partner portal. And what is really important is that the previous steps that we have highlighted to you today, which is the steps in relation to the CCM confirming the submission pathway and the PR nomination of information, they have been shared with the Global Fund. So we recommend to stay in touch with also your CCM. And we, as we mentioned, the moment that this information has been provided, the CCM and the PR, they are receiving their link to access the partner portal and start working on the forms. The next question is, how many editors and submitters are allowed to nominate in the grant entity data? So as Nikhil mentioned, it is really, really important to ensure that your grant entity data is up to date, and there is no specific limit on the number of users that you can have with editors and submitters. We do highly advise that you consider that at the minimum you will have and you are required to have at least one submitter. So we recommend at least 2 submitters, and again depends on your unique setting. At least you have 1 submitter. So this is the required minimum, and if you have an option to have 2 submitters or more, this would be great. The number of additional people who will have access and will need access will depend entirely on your organization needs. And do please note that the online PF and the online HPMT, you may want to consider additional access for the colleagues that are working on the programmatic and procurement areas. So they are experts and they would be able to complete those forms. As the budget remains Excel-based, the finance colleagues may not need to have the direct access for the funding request, the grant making submission. So it is up to you how you would like to work with their team members. So let's move to the next question. So the next question is focusing about an option to download the Performance Framework Excel template and work offline, and then import it back to the partner portal. So here with the GC8, what we said earlier, the performance framework is moving to the online format. So what that means is the expectation would be for you to complete the online performance framework and to submit it to your CCM. The Excel collaboration file is available for you exactly for the collaboration purposes, so that you can extract the information of what you have entered so far and share and discuss with your team members as needed. But essentially what will be critical is to ensure that the information is entered in the performance framework online. So this is very, very important, as there's no import option available. There's a question, moving to the next one, about the difference in payment for result format. So the process and the forms are the same, and the guidance in terms of level of detail and content to include what type of information included in each form will differ. So there are more details that are available in the supporting materials, and specifically in the operational policy note, the budgeting guidelines, and we also recommend to reach out to your country team in case of particular questions applicable for your portfolio or your grant. Let's move to the next one. So here's the question about the previous experience with filling up the forms, that it takes time for data entries, and sometimes there are issues that do not allow the desired functions to be proceeded. So in case of problems, how the PR is expected to navigate the situation and what they should do. So the system is essentially available for you to capture the information and automatically save it, and also to prevent any data loss. So there's specifically detailed guidance that will be made available to you in the partner portal manual, with all the steps that we briefly covered today in in the demonstration video to guide you all the way. If by any chance you experience any issues, please contact your country support. So the email is captured here, but also we provide, of course, the details in the supporting materials. The support is available in English, in French, and Spanish. And in case you would like to, you can also reach to your country teams if you're really, really blocked and especially near the submission timelines. But as a first point of contact, please reach out to country support. Okay, so moving us to the next question. So here we have a reference to the problem that was previously experienced with different steps, because usually the principal recipients they complete after they submit the proposal, and the PR can only intervene during the grant making process. So here specifically at the grant making, between the PR and the Global Fund will still follow the grant ready funding request process. However, what is changing, and this is the new submission pathway, and it also creates option for the CCM to bring continuing PRs formally into the funding request process to start developing the core grant documents instead of CCMs developing the PF for the budget and the component level during the funding request. And the key advantage is that the process starts early, so the PRs are already starting to work on the documents, and that saves crucially the time. Now, it is also one of the essential steps in the country dialogue process. So as the PRs are working on the forms, the country dialogue process is continuing. It's not changing. So what that means is that the grant design, the negotiations, they start much earlier. They're reducing rework and saving time, but also there's a continuous conversation between stakeholders, and the forms are being finalized in consultation. And then, of course, as we mentioned earlier, the moment that we move to the grant making phase, those forms can be further updated based on the outcomes of the funding request review. Okay, so the next question is looking into the HPMT, which refers to limitation not allowing to select other implementers in the drop-down list. And I think it does refer to the previous version of the HPMT, which was still Excel. So here, again, we're looking into the completely new form that we're bringing with the GC8 as the HPMT is being updated and it is fully online. So there will be more details and explanations that we will offer on the information session on the 21st of April. So please join if you can. And if you cannot, then the information materials will be available. And also the dedicated partner portal manual for you on how to complete the steps in the HPMT. The next question is looking into the performance framework and HPMT, specifically for one of the portfolios. So here we would advise to reach directly country team with a dedicated timeline. And again, once the forms are available, you will receive a notification and you can start accessing it and start working on it. Okay, so then I think we have a couple of more questions that are coming. So thanks so much, Nikhil, for moving us forward to those.
Thank you. I will just reshare the presentation to capture some of our more recent questions that have come in.
Thank you, Nikhil. And while you do so, we just wanted to thank you for your active participation and for all the questions that you have been sharing with us. This is great to see. And again, the questions that you share, we capture the answers. And if you have any further questions that you feel that might come after the information session, you can always raise them. Okay, so then I think we are having next question appearing on the screen. Thank you so much, Nikhil. Okay, so the question is about the submission of the PF, the budget, and HPMT during the first draft submission of the funding request. So does the PR really have to submit those forms during the first draft submission? So essentially, the PR will submit the PF and budget to the CCM prior to the CCM deadline to submit the full application to the Global Fund. And as we saw for window 1, if I'm not mistaken, that was June 8th, right, Nikhil? So there we are really asking you as PRs to coordinate with your CCMs, also to work closely on the timelines to ensure you have the time sufficiently to fulfill those timelines within your CCM's overall plan. Now, the HPMT does not need to be submitted directly to the CCM, but the Excel extract can be optionally shared with the CCM. So again, more information on how to do so for the HPMT we'll explain on the information session on 21st of April. So the HPMT will be submitted directly to the Global Fund prior to the TRP review. And again, as we said earlier, the documents can be updated during grant making. So essentially here, you would really need to make sure that as soon as you receive the access link to your forms, you start working on it, you stay in close collaboration with your CCMs, you align to the timelines so that the overall package, so the CCM has finalized, because they have additional documents to work on, so all the package has been finalized by the timeline that we mentioned. Now, the next question is looking into an offline Excel form and if it will be available so that the PR can work on it and then all as agreed upload the information in the system. So maybe the differentiation here is about the type of form we're referring to. So the budget is the Excel. So you still have access to the Excel. So you download it from the partner portal, you work on it, you complete, and the final version is then attached in the portal, and then the information will be imported. When it comes to the performance framework or to the HPMT, those both are online. So you would be expected to submit them online. You will have an option to have the supporting extract shared with you, and in the partner portal you can have the option of accessing that, but that supporting extract is not the form that you will be expected to submit. It is just for the reference purposes for collaboration. So all data that you would have to enter in the PF and HPMT will have to, online forms will have to be final. So if you worked off your Excel, you will have to ensure that everything that you have captured in your Excel is then transferred in those forms, so entered and selected as we've seen today, because the online form is what counts. So that's really, really important. Okay, so then I think we have a couple of more questions coming, so thanks so much. Okay, so we have a very specific question about the performance framework and some of the indicators that require the both numerator and denominator, but there's only percentage that is available, and the question is, can only percentage be included there? So the answer here is really, we ask you to provide the information as much as possible that you have at that point of time, and include all the data types that are required. In exceptional cases, only the percentage can be provided, but then in those cases, you would really have to explain and provide those explanations in the comment section. And also, we strongly advise you to contact your PHME focal point and the country team for specific questions. So the idea here is to provide the information that is being asked, and then if there's any exceptional case, you liaise with your PHME focal point. So then we have a next question about the modular framework. The modular framework will be published shortly with the other materials on the Global Fund page, so stay tuned for that. And we greatly appreciate the questions that are coming. So I think we have a couple of more. So let's move us to the next one if available. And then I'm just checking with my colleagues on time. I think we're good on time, right? So we have quite a good engagement from the audience. Thank you, Nikhil. Okay, so then the next question is about the baseline and whether it is required information. In case there's no baseline, then missing information will be considered as error via DQ checks. So the baseline essentially is required, it should be provided, but if not available, then there should be a plan to collect the baseline data entry in the grant. And you would need to explain how exactly this would be achieved and what is the plan to provide that information in the comments section. And again, here, please do contact your PHME focal point in the country team for the specific question for the detailed guidance, because I understand it's particular to the portfolio or to the indicator. Now, next question is on the coverage indicators. Is it add new indicators other than given in the drop-down menu? So yes, it is possible to add custom indicators if needed. And again, here we strongly advise you to contact your PHMNI focal point first, just to make sure that you are not duplicating any information. Just review the options available and contact your PHMNI. Okay, so then moving us to the next question. Okay, so then we have the question about the selection and finalization of impact, outcome, and coverage level indicators by public and private partners. Will a separate session be conducted, or the process will follow the same approach as the GC7 grant? So here the process will be the same for all other partners. So the expectation is to follow the same process. Next question, for the grant ready, are we still required to choose the window, or we can submit whenever ready? So the selection of the window is really with the CCMs. The CCMs will select the window, and this will subsequently determine the deadline to submit to the Global Fund. The PRs and the CCMs, they should coordinate to agree on a deadline for the PR to submit the documents to the CCM. And this is what we mentioned earlier. It's really to ensure that you're fulfilling those steps within that plan, so you have enough time for review and inclusion of overall funding request submission. And as mentioned, of course, the PRs and CCMs should be working together closely throughout the process to ensure alignment. So the moment that you have received the forms, please do access them. Please contact your CCM to ensure that you are clear on the timelines, and you work in close collaboration with the CCM. Okay, so do we have more questions coming, Nikhil?
Yes, I think we have, if I can see correctly, I think we have just another 4 or 5 more questions that are still remaining, and we have a few minutes left. I know our colleagues are working quite diligently to provide all of the answers for all the questions. So thanks again for all the participants that have taken the time to post these questions. I think it's helpful for everybody to indeed hear the answer.
Absolutely.
So I know I'll take some questions in the meantime, but let me actually again reshare the screen, and we can go over actually some of the answers for the remaining questions which have just come in. So big thank you to the colleagues.
Thanks, Nikhil. So for change of voice, would you like to take a couple of next questions?
Perfect, for sure. Happy to do so. So the next question that we have is, how will TRP analysis results / inputs be shared with the PR? Will this be done online, or will this be done in any other way? So no changes have been made to how this will be shared with the PR. This will be done in the exact same way as GC7. Now, the next question that we have is that for the purposes of filling out the performance framework, how will we know which indicators will require disaggregation? So in the partner portal, when you are filling out the performance framework, the required disaggregation, it will be visible in the edit indicator window. If there is no disaggregation available that is visible, then it means that there will be no disaggregation that is required. Now, I know we have another question in the meantime that asks us, given that the platform allows for downloading the PF and detailed budget files, does the platform then only allow importing of information uploaded offline, or must the information be filled out online? So just as a reminder, for the cases of grant ready funding request, the budget can be filled in Excel and uploaded to the partner portal. Whereas for the performance framework, it will be in an online form, same as the HPMT. So the HPMT must be filled out online and the performance framework. There will be supporting Excels for offline collaboration, but these will not be imported back into the portal. So for any online forms, you will need to then complete this in the system. So I'm just going to go ahead and reshare very quickly one more time. Thank you for your continued patience. Thank you, everybody, for your continued questions. So then we have some additional questions. So again, the next question is, will the system allow you to work on the performance framework for more than 2 days? Because obviously some may not finish the performance in 1 day. And so yes, PRs will be allowed to work on the online performance framework for however long it is required. There is no time limit on when the online performance framework will close. So you will, of course, then have time to work on it for as many days as needed. The information that is inputted is auto-saved as it is entered, and so it will be available as you log in again. Moving over, so the next question we have is that, is there any send back mechanism by CCMs to PRs after sending the documents to the CCM if any troubleshooting is needed by PRs? So yes, the CCMs will be able to request a resubmission of any of the documents that have been submitted by the principal recipient. Of course, we really recommend that the PRs are in close contact with the CCM around the development of these documents before the CCM submits it in the system. Ideally, the CCM will not be looking at these grant level documents for the very first time when you submit them. Now, moving on to the next question, which is, how long is the PF going to be available for update since it's online for use? So similar to the question that we had just went over, so indeed the online PF will be available for use by the PRs up until the deadline for CCMs to submit their funding request to the Global Fund, which of course will depend on the selected TRP window. So for window 1, this means there is the deadline of June 8th. And then for window 2, we have a deadline later in, I believe, July it was. Additionally, the PF should be submitted to the CCM in advance of this deadline so that the CCM has time to review the performance framework. And in case, like the previous question suggests, the CCM may ask the PR to resubmit. So we, of course, encourage all principal recipients to please coordinate with your CCM to agree on timelines to ensure that there is a timely funding request submission that also includes grant level documents that have been completed by the principal recipients. So we're just getting to the last bit of questions. So just a few more minutes for those joining us today. Moving on, so then we get some additional questions on, and I will just project the slides again so that it is available for everybody. So here we have some of the final questions for today's session, which is, will a recording be available? So indeed, a recording of this session will be available, and it will be available on the Global Fund website, alongside a variety of other resources that will be available in this slide deck that is shared. For CCMs, CCMs, of course, refers to the country coordinating mechanism. And then finally, we have the final question for us today in today's session, which is some of the countries that have been applied, that have been invited to apply using the PC, aka the Program Continuation Pathway. But this approach has not been explained. So there's some questions around what are the requirements and procedures So indeed, the intention of today's session was to walk PRs through following a grant-ready funding request submission. This grant-ready submission will follow one of the 4 application approaches of full review, or tailored for transition, or tailored for focused. For any portfolios that are invited either to program continuation or for investment priorities, additional information will be made available to PRs in a short while. In the meantime, if you have any question, please contact your country team with any questions. So I think from my side, this concludes the question and answer session for today. Again, a big thanks to all the participants who have joined us today for this session. And again, a big thank you to my colleagues who have helped to present and as well to give some wonderful answers for all the questions that have been shared. We hope that you have found this session useful. Again, we will share the recording of this session for you to follow along in the near future, alongside a variety of additional resources that you can then use for your grant-ready funding request. And of course, as normal, we will share grant-making resources in a short while as well. Once again, thank you everybody for your time. Really appreciate it. I know we have just some last questions coming in, so maybe I'll take just the last few minutes to capture those and to reshare those. So we had some last minute questions just come in on the WPTM section as well as the program continuation. So for those that are interested in hearing the answer, so the first question was, is there a WPTM section in the performance framework? And how do I enter WPTM data? And so for this, for the WPTM work plan tracking measures, the relevant modules and interventions must be filled out in the overview section. And then the user will be able to select those modules and interventions in the WPTM section. The WPTM section does have free text, but the user will be required to select a WPTM category from the dropdown. The next question we have, again, is around program continuation pathway. So again, for any countries and portfolios that have been invited for this program continuation pathway, we will share more information with you directly shortly. In the meantime, again, please reach out to your country team for any questions. Additionally, we got another question on if there are more than one PR for one disease, will both the PRs submit separate PFs? So indeed, there will be only one PF and one budget for each grant related to the funding request. This might mean that one PR might do more than one PF or budget. So for example, an HIV grant and a malaria grant. Or multiple PRs might submit multiple PFs and budgets. And then the final question that we have is that we hope that the format capture of the PF captures the payment of result indicators as well. And yes, indeed, DLIs will be selected from an available list of standard indicators. So again, thank you everybody for all of the questions that have been shared with us today. And again, a big thanks for all of you taking the time out of your day to participate. We hope this session will help PRs in terms of following the necessary steps to submit grant level documents for a grant-ready funding request. So this will conclude the end of our session, and a big thanks again to everybody. Have a great rest of the day. Thank you.